If you've got a 6000 or 5000 series card from AMD, they don't care about optimizing games for you anymore, or at least optimizing the drivers for games for you anymore, and I think that's completely unacceptable. Here's the direct quote from AMD confirming that this is their plan moving forward. RDNA 1 and RDNA 2 graphics cards will continue to receive driver updates for critical security and bug fixes. To focus on optimizing and delivering new and improved technologies for the latest GPUs, AMD Software Adrenalin Edition 25.10.2 is placing Radeon RX 5000 and RX 6000 series graphics cards, that's RDNA 1 and RDNA 2, into maintenance mode. Future driver updates with targeted game optimizations will focus on RDNA 3 and RDNA 4 GPUs. So, that's it. That was AMD's direct response to PC Games Hardware, which I'll link the source in the video description, asking for clarification about this because it was noted in their latest driver release that, yeah, the game optimization updates were not for the 5000 and 6000 series cards. And I do not think this is a good decision from AMD. And I think that this is the opposite of what they need to do if they're going to try to gain any sort of market share against NVIDIA. So this is quite frankly ridiculous. So let's give a couple of reasons why. Number one, AMD has released brand new 6000 series SKUs as recently as 2 years ago. And I'm not rounding up, I mean like October of 2023. AMD released the RX 6750 GRE, albeit this is kind of, I think, a China region model, but this was released in October of 2023. That is 2 years ago. 2 years ago, and it's already out of driver support. To my knowledge, this card is still like in active production. I mean, at least, I checked at Tech Power Up and they're at least listing it under active production. So if it stopped, it was pretty recently. So AMD is just saying, driver updates to optimize for games, no longer needed. And guys, this is kind of important because a lot of games launch, I'm sure you're aware, without the greatest optimization all around, but at least AMD, NVIDIA, and Intel tend to do what they can at the driver level to at least make sure, there's no weird graphical bugs and glitches and that things are performing as well as they can. So AMD is just confirming, not going to worry about that anymore. Now, another reason why I find this incredibly concerning, beyond just the fact that AMD has launched new 6000 series cards as recently as 2 years ago and has been selling them and producing them even more recently than that, is let's think about cards like the 6800 XT, for example. So the 6800 XT had been a really good buy for a lot of years following its launch in 2020. By the way, it launched in 2020. That is 5 years ago. That is not all that long ago. And the 6800 XT is still an incredibly relevant product performance-wise. Let's look at that for a second. So a 6800 XT was replaced by the 7800 XT, but the 7800 XT famously was barely perceptibly faster than the 6800 XT in most games. Most reviews, mine included, had it as less than a 10% generational performance jump comparing the 7800 XT and the 6800 XT, which meant that a lot of the discounted 6800 XTs performance per dollar wise were a better buy than the 7800 XT for like a year after the launch of the 7000 series. And not only that, look how powerful a 6800 XT still is in raw power compared to brand new cards launched this current generation. Cards like the 5060 Ti are generally a little bit less powerful if we're not talking about hardware ray tracing being used. Cards like the 9060 XT, generally noticeably less powerful than a 6800 XT, and that's AMD's brand new mid-range card. Even newer cards, like a 4070, generally only a tiny bit faster unless you're using ray tracing heavily. Cards like the 5070, generally within like 20% of the performance of a 6800 XT, again, when not using ray tracing heavily. Cards like AMD's own brand new flagship 9070 XT is generally only about a 50% performance improvement, again, when not using ray tracing heavily. So the idea here that the 6800 XT is some legacy product that we should no longer bother optimizing games for, to me seems absolutely insane. Because, again, if you're an AMD customer who bought a 6800 XT at some point within the last 5 years, and remember when they launched in 2020, that was the crypto boom. You think graphics card prices aren't great now. They were way worse then. So really a lot of people didn't start buying those cards for gaming specifically until a year or two after production. So there's a good chance you bought one within the last 3 years or so. Has AMD launched anything to really compel you to upgrade since then? The 6800 XT, still playing games extremely well. And the only card AMD has launched that is enough of a performance jump that it might be worth considering since then is the 9070 XT and maybe the 7900 XTX. 7900 XTX was way more expensive. It's not the same price class. 9070 XT, still more expensive, but at least in a similar price class, 50% performance jump. That's kind of the it might be worth the upgrade. You also get the FSR4 kind of situation, but still a lot of people I think are looking for kind of double the raw performance to make that big investment in a new graphics card worthwhile. And they just still haven't delivered on that level of advancement since then. Meaning, if you're a happy AMD customer, bought yourself a 6800 XT, got a lot of performance, it's still running games well, and suddenly they're telling you, wait a minute, we're just not going to bother optimizing games for this anymore in the drivers. I could see this turning off a lot of people from the AMD ecosystem. And that is the opposite of what they need to be doing. Because if AMD wants to gain market share, presumably they would like to do that. Have they given up on that? They had stated a while back in an interview that they would like to be gaining market share, and I don't see why they wouldn't want to be doing that. Well, first thing, making your current customers angry and disappointed, probably not the best way to go for gaining market share in the future, because then you're people who have a 6800 XT and are now feeling a bit left out by this. Maybe they're going to be less likely to want to buy an AMD GPU in the future because they feel burned. Secondly, to actually gain market share and not just lose market share because you're losing the customers you had, you need to convince people who are currently buying NVIDIA GPUs to switch over to the AMD ecosystem. And you don't do that by offering, ending game optimization driver support, 2 years after you launch a product for that generation of product. I mean, that's just not the right way to go. To gain market share, you need to establish that you have the better product, better services. You need to give people a reason to switch. And I just don't think that this is the kind of thing that is going to inspire people to switch to AMD when, if they were already buying NVIDIA in the first place. You need to give them a reason to switch. And then the people who are already buying AMD, you need to give them a reason not to switch. This doesn't feel like it for me. So I would love for AMD to feel the pressure on this and reverse this decision. Because again, not targeting game optimizations for these, again, people who bought these products, a lot of the 6000 series is more powerful than a PlayStation 5. A PlayStation 5 is still the current gen design target lead platform for most game development right now. And that's about as powerful as like a 6700 non-XT roughly, and is even missing some features. It's kind of an RDNA 1, RDNA 2 hybrid. So even cards like the 6700 XT, a bit more powerful than a PS5. like people who have that are still playing games absolutely fine. Why are we dropping driver support for that? It just does not make sense to me. Now, what is AMD's claimed reason for doing this? Okay, so they're saying that they're doing this to focus on optimizing and delivering new and improved technologies for the latest GPUs. So basically, they're just saying they want to focus on their newer generations moving forward. And so what does that mean? Well, it's true that starting with RDNA 3 and more significantly, much more significantly with RDNA 4, AMD did start offering additional machine learning acceleration that the 5000 and 6000 series cards don't have. So again, they're talking about improved technologies. So what this feels like to me is that we're probably getting close to FSR Redstone coming out. Now, FSR Redstone, AMD has talked about this. This is going to include some big machine learning features. Looks like it's mainly targeted at getting to kind of feature set parity with NVIDIA regarding things like ray reconstruction. AMD has talked about their ray regeneration feature, their AI denoiser. They've talked about a different frame generation technique that will be machine learning based. They've talked about improvements to their machine learned upscaler, things like that. And so it seems like they're kind of, in this case, it sounds like they're kind of pivoting as that's the future. And so maybe due to the lack of, or at least reduced machine learning inferencing, matrix multiplication, features, or on these classes of GPUs, seems like maybe AMD is kind of distancing themselves from that moving forward. That seems to be what I'm getting out of this, is they're probably prepping that Redstone launch, and this doesn't bode well for Redstone, maybe at least being targeted at these cards, even if it ends up running kind of incidentally. I mean, I've tested out the Int 8 version of FSR 4, which was accidentally leaked by AMD. It does run on 6000 series cards. It doesn't run, I did have some issues with it, and only super old driver versions were compatible with it. Again, it kind of gives the feeling like maybe AMD kind of had looked at supporting it on them and maybe abandoned the idea somewhere along the way. I don't know, but that's not great because, like I said, if AMD wants to gain market share in this space, abandoning cards from any any level, right? I get that they're saying that it will receive driver updates for security and bug fixes, but really just saying outright that we're no longer focused on game optimizations for these, and we're really focusing on new technologies. I think they do need to focus on those new technologies. And if they're not gonna be supported on the older cards, I do get that, but you should support these cards to any level that you can. To not burn your current customers, and really, how are you going to convince people to switch over? Because again, I understand the Steam hardware survey is not perfect, but if we look at this, not only do we see NVIDIA just all over the top of this list, but what besides integrated graphics? By the way, a lot of these integrated graphics are RDNA 2 based. By the way, anyway, a lot of integrated graphics. And then we get the RX 6000 series card. So AMD's most popular card on the Steam hardware survey, not going to get game optimization updates at the driver level anymore. That's really uncool, AMD. Yeah, then we get the 7000 series, but then we get some older ones, the 580. Okay, then we get some more 7000 series, then the 570. Then we get some 7000 series, but okay, here, a couple more 6000 series cards right here. There's that 6800 XT again. Notice that a lot of AMD's newest generation, not showing up here. popularity-wise, and yet dropping driver support on that. On these cards that are on here, like I said, their top card on the Steam hardware survey right now is one of the ones that they are no longer targeting game optimizations for. How do you guys feel about this in the comment section? Am I being ridiculous? I do not think that asking for more than 5 years of optimizations for a product that is still incredibly relevant for gaming, somebody who bought this would absolutely not be feeling like they're on ancient, outdated hardware when playing the latest games. I think that's unacceptable. And like I said, they've launched RDNA 2 products as recently as 2 years ago and been selling them in the meantime. Not cool, AMD. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Still have an excellent day, though.